Hi, I'm Debra Loder. I'm the dietitian and dietary manager at Wickenburg Community Hospital here in Wickenburg, Arizona. And I am also the deacon at St. Albans Episcopal Church here in Wickenburg, Arizona. And that's where I am today. I thought that I needed a kitchen today because I wanted to show you some cooking methods for fall foods. So I brought all my things down here to the church and we set up, and so that's why this venue looks unfamiliar to you. I just couldn't imagine sitting at my round table in my office with all this food. It just seems unnatural. So here we are in a kitchen, and I thank St. Albans for allowing me to use the kitchen today. So we're here to talk about fall foods, nutritious and delicious. And fall foods are extremely nutritious, and I think they're extremely delicious. When we talk about fall foods, it's mostly talking about fruits and vegetables, because that's what we think in the fall is those produce markets that have created all of these wonderful, rich, flavorful vegetables for us, and fruits. So fruits and vegetables, and nuts are another thing that we find in the fall because the nuts grow and then the harvest time is in the fall. The interesting thing is that we can get all these foods year-round now. They're grown somewhere in our world year-round, and they're imported to us, or farmers have figured out how to grow things in different areas. So I can't think of one really. I know Georgia peaches, but peaches are grown in other areas too. And at one time, the Northwest was where we would get apples and pears, but now apples and pears are grown in other areas of the country that ripen in the spring. So it's interesting to talk about fall vegetables being in season, but a lot of them really are better in the fall because they need maybe the cold weather to kind of zap some sweetness into them. That's what apples need, is they need that last bit of cold weather to make them the sweetest and the best. So I'm going to start with apples today, and pardon my notes, but I felt that it was really important today to have some notes because a lot of these vegetables, well, all of these vegetables and fruits have antioxidants, and I want to make sure that I'm pronouncing them correctly. So let's talk about apples. I've got a couple of varieties of apples here. This is a Honeycrisp, and it's currently my favorite apple. And then up in the front is a Gala apple. And there's Delicious, there's Granny Smith, there's Jonathan, Golden Delicious. There's just so many varieties of apples. Apples are really economical calorie-wise. A medium apple, and the Gala up in the front is probably a medium apple, so about the size of a baseball, not a softball, a baseball. So that's a medium-sized apple. It only has about 95 calories, so those are really good calories because there's a lot of fiber, there's a lot of vitamin C. So we want to make sure that we're eating the skin because that's where a lot of the goodness is. A lot of the fiber and a lot of the vitamins are right in the skin. And so if you can not peel it, it's the best. If you have to peel it for something, that's okay. And I'll tell you what you can do with those peelings to get some goodness out of those as well. There is a phytonutrient called flavonoids, which may help decrease the risk of Alzheimer's disease. So that's one of the things that we can think about when we have our apple a day to keep the doctor away. So it also helps with heart disease and type 2 diabetes. We've talked before about fiber and different kinds of fiber, and one of the fibers, which is called pectin, is really effective in helping us control our blood glucose. So another great reason. There are antioxidants, so that helps lower our bad cholesterol. It also helps fight infections and diseases. So what do you do with apples? Well, our favorite way to eat apples is to eat them out of hand as a snack. There's nothing better than to sink your teeth into those crispy, ripe, juicy apples. You can also add them to salads, add them to your coleslaw. Just little chunks of apples in with your cabbage for coleslaw is just delicious. The other thing you can do is make them a really healthy snack for your children or for yourself by cutting them into slices and then having either peanut butter or almond butter to dip them in. And then if you want to make it a sweeter snack, you can dip them in caramel. Just a caramel topping that you would use on ice cream or something makes a really fun dessert. The other thing is to bake them with their skin on. Just hollow out the center, fill that center with a little bit of agave nectar or some maple syrup or a little honey, and then sprinkle on some cinnamon. You might want to put some some raisins into that cavity that you took the core out of, and then bake them until they're nice and tender and they just fall apart. And if you want, you can top that with a little dollop of sour cream or a little dollop of Greek yogurt for a really yummy and healthy dessert. Of course, you can also make them into an apple pie, an apple crisp, or you can make them into applesauce. So apples, one apple a day, I'm going to say, I think it will help keep the doctor away, okay? The next thing is beets. And beets are a vegetable that is really in season in the fall. They like the cooler weather, and you can eat the whole plant. I know sometimes we think when we look at bulb, vegetables that are a bulb, we think that we only can eat that part, but we can eat the beet greens, and they're much like spinach or something like that, and so eat the whole thing, don't waste any of it. The red color comes from a phytochemical called betanin. So the red color in the beets can be used as a natural dye for foods. And a lot of times, if you look at the label of some of the more organic kinds of foods that have food coloring in them, you'll see that it's a beet juice food coloring. Another compound, it's betalain, which is found in beets, is linked to the reduced risk for cognitive decline. So it's good for our mental health. It also is important for immunity, so it helps prevent cellular damage, so the damage that happens to our bodies. And then it also has naturally occurring nitrates, which may help support blood pressure. So that's the goodness of beets. How do you use beets? Well, you can pickle beets and make a salad with them. So if you have a jar of sweet pickles and you're using that last pickle, then get some beets and put them in that juice and let them sit for a few days, and they'll absorb all of that sweet goodness from your pickles, and then you can use those beets on a salad or just eat them as a side. Beets are kind of hard to work with, and I say that because that red juice from them will really, really stain things. Stains your hands, stains everything. So some people don't like to use fresh beets. So you can use canned beets if you want. And they also have beets that are pre-cooked, and they come in these little packets like this. And so they have a really long shelf life. You keep them in your refrigerator. These are good until January 2nd of 2021. So you could cut those beets up, use them as a side by just warming them and add a little bit of olive oil and maybe some balsamic vinegar and salt and pepper. Really nice vegetable side dish. You can put them in soup and make a borscht soup, which is a famous Russian soup. You can slice raw beets and put them on a salad if you want to do that, or just cooked beets also on a salad. And I'm going to step away and get some paper towels, which I forgot to do before I started. So I'm going to put these here for me to do something. Earlier, I cooked some beets in the oven. So what I did, I actually cooked several vegetables here, and I'll tell you a little bit about all of them as we move along. But I cooked these beets, I roasted them. And once you roast them, they're really easy to peel. So the peeling just pulls away. So that's what I wanted to explain to you, is if you just roast them or boil them, then the peeling will peel away and it's not quite as messy as if you're trying to peel them before they're cooked, because then you get a lot of that juice all over and it really does stain. So it just pulled off I'm using a paper towel. I could use some gloves if I wanted to. So you just pull the skin off and then they're ready for you to add to your salads or slice them up as your side dish. Put these out of the way. So that's beets. The next vegetable that I'll talk about is broccoli. And up here in the front is broccoli. And I won't talk a whole lot about how to use broccoli because you all know how to use broccoli. It's a pretty popular vegetable that we see all the time. So I want to talk to you more about the nutrition value. And it's a great source of fiber, very high in fiber. And it's important when you eat broccoli that you eat the stem. I know that sometimes we cut away this stem and we think it's because it's tough. Well, it is a little bit tough, but what you can do is cut it into small pieces and then steam it. So cut your florets off and use them, and then take the stalk and kind of cut it into small pieces, little cubes, and then steam those along with the broccoli florets. And they really do get tender. They're very sweet and very delicious. So don't throw away those stems. Broccoli is a very good source, an excellent source of vitamin C. It has cancer-fighting compounds called sulforahane, which may protect us against cancer. So you can steam the broccoli, you can put it into soups, you can put it into things like a chicken noodle casserole to add some oomph to that. So eat your broccoli, it's a really good thing for you. Brussels sprouts, oh dear. A lot of people, including my husband, say Brussels sprouts, yuck. Well, Brussels sprouts do have a bad name. They have kind of a sulfur compound that is much like broccoli. You know, you get that odor in the air when you cook Brussels sprouts that's kind of a little offensive. But I've learned that you can eliminate that by roasting the Brussels sprouts. They're really good. I roasted some earlier today, and I'll talk about this in a little while. But I cut the Brussels sprouts in half. I tossed them with a little bit of olive oil, and then I roasted them on a sheet pan in the oven. And I'll get to that in a little bit. But they're really, really good. They really do sweeten up, and there's that little bit of a toasty flavor from the brownness. So they're really good that way. Once again, they are high in fiber, really good source of fiber. And then they have glucosinolates. Those are compounds that are linked to lowering cancer risk by protecting your cells from damage. So we have this thing that happens in our bodies, and when there's damage to our cells, we produce this thing called free radicals. Well, these compounds will help fight that, and so they help protect our cells from cell damage. They're good also if you want to shred them and put them into a salad. Eating them raw is another great alternative. You could add them to a crudité platter to use with some ranch dip or something like that. So eat your Brussels sprouts. Carrots. You know, I love carrots. And I particularly love to get the whole carrots like this instead of the baby carrots. I think they're sweeter. I think that they're way more economical. It's not that hard to peel a carrot and to chop it up into little chunks or make it into sticks to eat raw or on the crudité platter. And you can also roast them or boil them. I like to cut them into carrot coins and then steam them and add a little bit of honey butter, and that makes a really good sweet side dish. when you peel your carrots, don't throw away the peeling. Oh, and by the way, when you peel your little Brussels sprouts to get them ready to eat, don't throw away the peeling. And I'll tell you why in just a few minutes. So carrots are really effective in helping to fight certain kinds of cancer, and the vitamin A helps protect us against eye disease and helps improve our eyesight. So make sure that you're eating plenty of carrots. And then there's cabbage. There's several types of cabbage. This is just a regular green cabbage, but there are other kinds like Savoy cabbage, Chinese cabbage, just a multitude of kinds, and they all have a little bit different flavor and texture. Coleslaw is one of the main reasons that I think, main recipes that we use cabbage in. The cabbage is also delicious just steamed with a little bit of olive oil on it and maybe some salt and pepper, or you can actually roast it. Another thing is to add it to soups. It makes a really great addition to soups. So, let's talk about why we want to eat that. It's high in fiber. It's got a lot of those antioxidants that we talk about all the time. If you make it into sauerkraut or kimchi, the fermentation process creates the probiotics that we've talked about before. So those probiotics are really good for our GI system, really help support gut health. So, those are good reasons to eat your cabbage. It can be a little bit tough, and it can be a little bit bitter. So if you add a little bit of something sweet like apples, or add some agave nectar to your slaw, it will help both soften up and to get rid of some of that bitterness. The next vegetable on my table is cauliflower. So we see a lot of ways that we're using cauliflower today. Manufacturers have learned how to use cauliflower in so many different ways that you can find riced cauliflower, so it serves as a very low calorie and very low starchy substitute for rice. You can also cook it well and then mash it, and it stands in for mashed potatoes. So there's lots of ways that you can use cauliflower. Great on the crudité platter, great just steamed with a little bit of olive oil, salt and pepper, or roasted. And then you can also use cauliflower and broccoli to make a really luscious, creamy soup. So what you would do is just use your onions and celery and those aromatic vegetables to create a rich broth. Cook your cauliflower and your broccoli until it's real soft, and then use your immersion blender to blend it up to make a creamy soup. You can usually get along without adding anything else because it makes this cauliflower blended up makes things really creamy, but you could add some olive oil, some heavy cream, or some almond milk or rice milk, something like that. So cauliflower is easy to work with. It's very economical to use. It's always available, even though it is technically a fall vegetable. It's available year-round. You can find it in the riced version in the produce market. You can also find it in the frozen food aisle. So cauliflower is high in vitamin C, potassium, and plant-based omega-3 fatty acids. Cranberries. I didn't get anything done with my cranberries today, but I have a bag of cranberries and I have a bowl here of dried cranberries. Cranberries are just available in the fall. These are one of the things that we really only get in the fall, in the fresh form. You can get dried cranberries year-round, you can get frozen cranberries year-round, and you can get canned cranberry sauce year-round. But they are really a fall vegetable. They are a great source of fiber. They are a wonderful source of vitamin C. And they have anthocyanins that help prevent oxidative stress, which is tied to Alzheimer's disease and diabetes. So that's a great reason to add some cranberries to your diet. And we all have heard about how cranberry juice is good to help either prevent or treat urinary tract infections. And that's because there's the compound called proanthocyanin helps keep the harmful bacteria from sticking to the bladder wall. So that's why it will help decrease the risk or help treat those urinary tract infections. You can add either fresh or dried cranberries to your pancakes, your waffles, your muffins, scones, anything, any baked thing, quick bread. So you can add it to that. You can make a sauce out of the fresh ones, and there's a recipe right on the back of the package, and you can change it around. It calls for water. I use orange juice when I make my cranberries, and I substitute part agave nectar instead of sugar for to sweeten them. That is one of the things with cranberries is they're very, very tart, so you really do need to sweeten them. So just try to go easy on the sweetening. If you use orange juice or apple juice to cook them, that adds some natural sugar, so you can cut back on the added sugar. Winter squash, oh my goodness, one of my favorite subjects. You can ask my husband about this. I always have winter squash year-round. And that's one good thing about squash is that it stays year-round because of the hard shell. In earlier years, before when farmers grew their own winter squash, they would harvest them in the late fall and put them down in their cellar. And where it was nice and cool and dark and dry, they would keep all winter. I think that's why we call them winter squash, although they are ready in the fall. Today I have butternut and acorn, but there are a whole host of other winter squashes. One of my favorite is Hubbard squash, and it usually comes in a really big squash. I didn't find one at the store this week, so this was actually all I was able to find this week, which made me kind of sad because I wanted to bring a lot of it to show you. But you can use winter squash in a lot of different ways. You can roast it and just eat it as is. You can put it into soups like butternut squash soup, which I made some this morning, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. You can grill it. You can make squash muffins by substituting the pumpkin for a pumpkin muffin recipe with mashed up squash. So it's a really good way to use it. And you want to use a lot of it because it's high in beta carotene, which is converted by our bodies into vitamin A. And vitamin A is beneficial for our eye health and our immune system. So great reason for eating squash. It's also high in fiber, a great source of magnesium, which helps our muscle function. It really is good for people who are into sports and things. It helps muscle recovery to have plenty of magnesium. So what more delicious way to get the magnesium than from winter squash? The next vegetable on my table is leek. So a leek is in the onion family, and here's a leek. I'm sure you've seen them. There's a few things about leeks that I want to talk about. They are milder than onions, so if you want a milder flavor in a soup or a stew or a casserole, then a leek is the really good way to go. It's full of antioxidants, and once again, it's good for eye health because it may prevent eye problems like cataracts and macular degeneration. So that's a really good reason to eat it. There's also research that eating any allium vegetable, which includes onions and leeks, chives, things like that, garlic, They may be helpful in eliminating the colorectal cancer. So another really good reason to eat them. They're high in flavonoids, which may help protect us against heart disease. So use them in soup or anything just like you would an onion. I will tell you that it's really important to clean these well. So in the way leeks are grown is in sand, and each little layer of leek gets sand between it. And so if I peel this back, I think you can see it, that there is a lot of sand right there. So that will be evident throughout the whole leek. My favorite way to clean them is to take off the root and then slice them this way, and then put the slices in a bowl of water and take them apart, much like you were making onion rings or something like that. Rinse all of that off and then put them in a colander and then run them under the faucet again to make sure that you get rid of all of that sandiness that's in there. So I'm going to just set this aside over here. Pears. Pears are the next thing. So we're back to the fruits. There's a red pear right up there, but pears come in many different varieties. There's Bartlett, there's Bosque, there's Asian pears. There's just a whole lot of different varieties. They all have a different flavor, and they all have kind of a different texture. So the interesting thing about pears is they don't ripen on the tree. If they were allowed to ripen on the tree, they would become mushy and brown in the middle. And they ripen quickly when they're taken out of cold storage. So if you want to get the peak pears, you want to choose a pear that just gives you a little bit of pressure if you press it right here on near the stem. This one is not ready, but I will tell you that it will be ready before too long. So you really keep an eye on them when you buy them. But just like avocados, buy them a day or two before you want to use them so that you can make sure that they're at their peak ripeness when you use them. Fortunately, canned pears are very good, and so you can always get those year-round to use if you want to have pears for a salad or something. Why are they good for us? Well, once again, another great source of vitamin C and potassium. Both are very good for us. They're also high in fiber. Pears have one of the best sources of fiber for helping to prevent constipation. And one of the ways to help young children with constipation is to give them pear juice. Pear nectar comes in a can, and you know, when my son was a little boy, I gave him pear juice, and it was just amazing how much it helped him stay regular. So pears are really good for that. Pear nectar is a great source, or just using canned pears as well. There is some evidence out there that tells us that eating pears on a regular basis may help with our blood glucose control. It also helps with our blood pressure control and may help fight obesity. So good reasons to have pears. It's really good some really good ways to eat them are in salads. So just like you could put apples into your coleslaw, try some cut up pears in that coleslaw. It really will add to the vitamin and mineral content of your coleslaw, and also increase the fiber and sweeten it up a little bit. So pears are great that way. You can poach pears in some red wine to make a really elegant dessert that you could serve with a little dollop of sweetened sour cream, or some either frozen or fresh Greek yogurt. So really good for a lot of different ways. You can also use them in smoothies. That'd be a great way to increase the fiber content of your smoothies. Next, we will talk about sweet potatoes. Another one of my favorite foods, sweet potatoes. Right up there on the corner of the table is a sweet potato. Sweet potatoes are high in vitamin C, vitamin A, high in fiber, just an excellent, excellent vegetable for you to eat. You can roast them. I cooked one in the oven this morning, and I'll show you that in just a second. So you can roast them and then just eat them like you would a baked potato. You can roast them and then mash them. You can peel them and cut them into cubes and then steam them and mash them. Remember to save the peeling, and we'll talk about that in a minute. The other thing that you can do with sweet potatoes is make sweet potato fries. And you don't have to fry them. You can bake them in the oven, and they just become really soft and tender on the inside and so sweet and yummy. You can also substitute mashed sweet potato like you would pumpkin and make a quick bread or muffins. So that's another reason to, another way to use your sweet potatoes. Parsnips. Now parsnips are, to me, a little bit different. They are a cousin to the carrot, but they're white skin and white flesh. You peel them just like you would a carrot. You use them just like you would a carrot. So you can eat them raw on a crudité platter, or you can eat them steamed or boiled or roasted. So a lot of different ways that you can use a parsnip. They are high in fiber, vitamin K, and vitamin C. We know that vitamin C is an antioxidant. Vitamin K is really important for our cells, so it helps, the folate in them helps them to, our cells to divide, and the vitamin K helps our blood to clot. So the one thing I want you to take away is if you're on a blood thinner, like Coumadin, then you want to watch your intake of vitamin K. So you might not want to eat parsnips. Some other vegetables are high in vitamin K, and if you're on the type of blood pressure medication where you've been told to watch your vitamin K intake, then you know what you need to stay away from, and parsnips is one of those things. You can mash them, steam them. There's just all kinds of ways to eat parsnips. Sort of treat them like a carrot or a potato. I'll tell you a little story about me. I hated parsnips growing up. I'll tell a story on my dad. My dad would make us eat parsnips by sneaking them in with the mashed potatoes. Well, they're sweet, and I could tell that they were in there. So for a long time, I hated them. And then a few years ago, I ate them roasted, and now I like them. They're great. You know, the same thing with my husband. He didn't like Brussels sprouts until we roasted him, and now he'll eat Brussels sprouts. Still not his favorite, but he'll eat them. So kale. Kale is this yummy, beautiful green over here. Kale is, at one time, we used kale to make a bed for our crudité platter or as a garnish. But now we eat kale all the time. People put it in their smoothies. It's just a really good, very nutritious vegetable. So kale, one cup of raw kale only has 8 calories. Can you believe it? It also has lots and lots of fiber, vitamins A, C, and K, and then it has something called manganese, which is also a great mineral that we need in our diets. You can saute it, you can add it to soup or frittatas, you can put it into, when you make like a Chinese type recipe, you can add it to that, put it into soups. If you do eat it raw in a salad, it's a little bit tough. So what you want to do is slice it into thin ribbons, and you can dress it ahead of time because the dressing will actually help soften it up. You treat kale this way. You take away this by pulling it off of the stem. Now, don't throw the stem away, but you probably don't want to eat it. So this is the part that you would eat, and you slice it into thin ribbons if you're eating it raw. If you're cooking it in a soup or something, you can just tear it into chunks. Okay. I think that is all, no, that's it. I will talk about kohlrabies. I didn't do anything with kohlrabi today, but this is a kohlrabi up here. It's a sort of a bulb, but it doesn't grow underground. It grows on the top of the ground, and it is a fall vegetable, and it's called a German turnip. It's very low in calories. It's really sweet and tender and crunchy. So it's one of those things that if you eat it raw, like on a crudité platter or sliced into your salad, it's just excellent. So let's talk about some other things, and then if we have time, we will come back to a couple of other items. Let me talk about this. This is another way that you can buy butternut squash. So it's already cut up and in a container in your produce aisle. You can also buy it frozen in a frozen foods aisle. So butternut squash is really tough. It is a really hard vegetable to cut and peel. Last night I asked my husband if he would chop some vegetables for this presentation, and he said as long as it's not butternut squash. So I dealt with the butternut squash today, and I dealt with it in an easy way. Instead of chopping it for the butternut squash soup that I made, I roasted it. And so when it's roasted, it is much easier to get out of the shell. So I roasted it just upside, I cut it in half and scooped out the seeds, and then I just roasted it in the oven, and now it just comes right out. I'm glad all these things are available for me. It comes right out of the shell, and that's what I added to my butternut squash soup. So much easier way to do that. You could also, these little guys, you can cook this way and then just eat it like out of the shell with a little bit of salt and pepper on it. It's just yummy just like that. So, and then this is the acorn squash. I did the same thing with that because it's really tough. Between the ridges on the acorn squash and the tough shell, really tough to peel it. So that's a great way to take care of that. The same thing with a sweet potato. It's hard to peel a sweet potato sometimes, so if you roast it, it takes, you can take away the skin from the roasted vegetable, just like we did with the beets. So those are my examples of roasting a vegetable to make it easier to deal with. Set this aside. So back to the butternut squash soup. What I used, thanks to my husband who chopped my vegetables, this is called a mirepoix. Okay, so a mirepoix is aromatic vegetables that you can start soups and stews with, or chili, and you use onion, celery, and carrot chopped into equal sized pieces, and you can make them either real tiny or a little bit bigger. Mine are a little bit bigger. You can make them even chunkier if you want to, depending on what you're cooking. This is a mirepoix, and then there are other things. This is French, and so the people in like Louisiana have more of a Cajun variety, and they add bell peppers. So it just depends on what you're cooking, whether you want to just use the onion, celery, and carrots like I do, or if you want to add other aromatics to that. So what I did is, in my pot, I put about a tablespoon or so of good olive oil, and then I added in my mirepoix and sauteed that just a little bit until it was nice and tender. Then I added an apple. The apple gives it some sweetness, so I peeled the apple and saved the peelings, and then I cut it up, put it in with my mirepoix, and then added my butternut squash that I pulled out of the rind over there, and some vegetable broth. So this is completely vegan. This is not just vegetarian, it's vegan. It has no animal products at all in it. If you don't want it to be vegan, you could certainly use butter. You could certainly add a little bit of cream for richness, but I think that it's just fine just as it is. You can serve this in a nice bowl. Once again, it would be nice topped with some homemade croutons, maybe a little sprinkle of fresh parsley, maybe a little bit of sour cream would be good. So just a really yummy, comforting, very nutritious food for the fall. Remember what it's got. All of those, that butternut squash really did have a lot of yumminess in it and goodness in it. I also made a root vegetable soup. So this is just a soup that I made by putting my mirepoix in the bottom of the pan with some olive oil. Same thing, let it just saute a little bit until it was nice and tender. And then I added in chunks of sweet potato, butternut squash, carrots and parsnips, and turnip. I didn't show you the turnip, but I put some turnip in here. And then I put in a can of tomatoes, some vegetable broth, and a can of pinto beans. And at the very end, I took some of that kale, tore it into pieces, and put that in there and let it sweat down. So what we have is a nice vegetable-based soup. Well, it's actually vegan, again, because everything's vegetable. And you could just serve that with a little bit of Parmesan cheese on top of it if you wanted to, or just as is fine. So soups are a really good food for the fall because we want to stay indoors when it's starting to get colder. We want to feel snugly, and they're real comforting and warming. And it's good to cook in the wintertime because in the summer here in Wickenburg, we don't want our ovens on and pots boiling. So if we wanted to do this in the summer, we'd probably want to do it in the crock pot. Another great thing about fall, because we can use our ovens, instead of grilling our chicken outside in the fall, we can cook it in the house because, once again, we don't mind having our ovens on. So what I like to prepare is what I call a sheet pan dinner. So you can make a sheet pan dinner by just roasting everything on the same sheet pan. Here I did the Brussels sprouts, which I showed you earlier, and some sweet potato along with my chicken thighs. So that makes just dinner right there on this sheet tray. I don't have to add anything to it. I can just serve it as is. Here I'm going to use a little bit of that kale for my garnish on my plate, and then just add my chicken thigh and my vegetables. And you'll notice that the chicken thigh, I left the skin on because it helps keep it moist. But before I eat it, I'll take it off because it just has a lot of fat in there. So we want to take that off of there. So there's a nice dinner, really quick, easy. Just put some olive oil on your vegetables, a little salt and pepper. Same thing with your chicken thighs or chicken breast or salmon would be good here too. And then just bake it in the oven until everything's done. I'll keep this over here because the next thing I want to show you is just roasted vegetables. So I roasted just a handful of root vegetables. And so we have parsnips, we have carrots, we have a little bit of turnip, some sweet potatoes, some butternut squash, and some carrots and some onion. So I just roasted this all together, and it makes a nice side dish. Just that you can keep in your refrigerator all week and just warm it up and have it when you want to have a side dish. You can also use it on a salad. So you make your salad just like you would with some romaine lettuce or some spinach or something like that, and then add your roasted vegetables to the top, and then I like to put a little bit of balsamic vinaigrette on it, and it makes a really good salad. So for our reasons today, I'm just going to put it on the plate with my chicken thigh, and I could add a little bit of salad, or maybe add some apple slices or some orange slices to make a complete meal. I think I only have one other thing to talk about. The reason that we saved all of these things. So when you cook any vegetable or fruit, you're going to let some of the nutrients out into the cooking liquid. So that's why soups are particularly healthy, because all of the goodness stays in the broth of the soup and you eat it. So when you, like if you are boiling something or steaming something, some of the nutrients, not all of them, but some of those nutrients, especially the water-soluble nutrients, go into the water. So in order to save that, have your soups and things. But there's another trick that I'll tell you about. And that is making your own homemade vegetable broth. So as I was preparing this morning, all of my trimmings went into this pot with some water and a little bit of salt and pepper. And it's been sitting over here on the stove all morning, just simmering away. And what I've done is I've created my own vegetable broth, so I don't have to buy it. And all of that goodness from all of those vegetables, the scraps, are right in my broth. So what I would do is, I'm not going to strain it all because I want it to continue to cook. I'm not finished with it yet. I want to cook it a little bit longer so that I get every bit that I can out of it. But what I would do next is strain it through a strainer. If you want it to be really clear, you could line the strainer with a coffee filter, and then it would be super clear and beautiful. But I'm just going to use it in soup or something, so I'm just going to leave it like that. And here I see some carrot peels, and I see some of the peeling from the little Brussels sprouts, and here's some onion skin and some onion. So there's just a lot of good stuff in there, and I would strain it all out. And then I have my vegetable stock that I can use just like I did that in the can. This pot is really heavy and it's really hot, so I'm going to move it. And I have my nice stock that I could use in any soup, or you could use this as the liquid in gravy. You could use this as your liquid in a chili, or as the liquid in a casserole. So you can use this in many, many ways, and depending on what vegetables you put, depends on what it's going to taste like. So just mix it up. I had a lot of vegetables to prepare today. I prepared a ton. So you're not going to do that at home. So what you can do is when you peel your carrots, or you peel your beets, or cut up your onions, you're going to take all of those scraps and put it in a baggie and put it in the freezer. And when you've got a nice big baggie full, then you cook your stock all day on the stove, and it'll be just fine. I will tell you one thing is to make sure that your vegetables are clean. I often hear people say, why would I wash the potato before I peel it? Because I'm not going to eat the skin. Well, the reason is there is bacteria on that potato that you want to get rid of, because when you peel it, you're introducing the bacteria into the flesh of the potato. This is especially important with things like melons that you're going to eat raw and that won't be cooked. So when you think about it, if you have a watermelon, it's been laying on the ground, hasn't it? It's been down there on the ground, and it's dirty. And then it's been picked, and it's been packed, and then it's been delivered to a store, and then the produce handler puts it on the store shelf, and then it's full of bacteria. So you want to wash it well before you cut it. So that goes for all vegetables and fruits, because you're going to be eating that in one way or another. And if you make your veggie stock, you want to make sure that there's no little bits of dirt or anything in your stock, so that you want to clean those vegetables well before you eat them. So I think that's all I've got for you today. I think that fall foods are really nutritious and delicious. I hope I gave you some ideas. And once again, if you would like to make an appointment to see me on an individual basis, I'm available at the hospital, and some insurances are covering fees for registered dietitians now, which is great news. So we can check out and see if your insurance coverage will cover my sessions. You would make an appointment by calling 928-668-1811. Is that right? Thanks, Monique. So 928-668-1811. And that will get you to Sandy, who's my scheduler. So if you'd like to make an appointment, please do. If you're interested in receiving some ideas, some recipes, things like that, if you want to email me at debra.loder@wickhosp.com, I would be happy to share some of those ideas with you. I hope you've learned something today. I wish you all a happy Thanksgiving. It's amazing that we're already to Thanksgiving this year. And I hope that you use some of these ideas and some of these foods on your Thanksgiving table and stay healthy and well-nourished. Join us again in December, and I hope that you all stay safe and well, and thanks for watching. Bye-bye.